Good evening, friends, quorum members and guests. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Saloni Puri, and I lead the very creative team of programmers that bring you events like this and many more that you enjoy here in Gurgaon, in Mumbai, and in Hyderabad. So on behalf of the quorum, a very welcome to all of you. This is going to be a very thought-provoking conversation. So I want you to start this evening by giving me a little bit of your attention and be a little patient with me. I'm also trying to figure things out. So I want you to imagine something in the not-so-distant future. You are whizzing on the Gurugram-Jaipur highway. It's very late at night. It's very dark. It's raining, it's pouring. You're moving at a fast speed. And across you, you see lights of an oncoming vehicle, flashes in your eye. You can see it's crowded with people, but it's also moving at a fast speed. From the left, suddenly an old villager, old man, begins to cross the road. What is your instinct? Will you brake? But hold on, you are not behind the wheel. Hold on, because you're not in the driver's seat. You are sitting in your state-of-the-art, artificial intelligence-powered, autonomous vehicle. You are sitting in a driverless car. Now, what do you think the car is going to do? Will all the learning and programming that has gone into making its algorithms kick in? Do you think it'll save the old man? Do you think it'll save those 5 people in the car oncoming? And what would you have done had you been behind the wheel? Now, all of this loosely forms something which social scientists called the trolley problem. And the trolley problem is what is the basis of today's discussion. It is the basis on which our guest today has written her book, Autocorrect, AI, Ethics, and the Driverless Car. Now, folks, it's here. Very recently, myself, our guest today, Dr. Maya Ganesh, and Jaspreet Bindra were at a science conclave in Gurgaon, where I spent some time talking to a very lifelike humanoid robot called Sophia. She was interviewed in front of guests like you, and she was asked, what was it that she had a difficulty in learning and understanding? And she said that she couldn't wrap her head around human emotions and feelings, that she found it difficult to understand human emotions and feelings. Now, Citibank says that by the year 2035, and this is a very big report, there will be 1.3 billion humanoids and robots on our planet. And by 2050, there will be close to 4 billion humanoids and robots on our planet. So these are intelligent machines all around us. It's a reality. But who's training them? Who's teaching them? What are they being programmed with? Are they able to learn human values, compassion, kindness, altruism, generosity, ethics, morality? Is that even possible? Now, our guest today, Dr. Maya Indra Ganesh, hangs out with the most intelligent, super intelligent human beings who are all studying the future of intelligence. She is an associate director at the Center for the Center for the Future of Intelligence at Cambridge in UK. And she has been researching and studying technology, culture, and society for a while. She has a doctorate in cultural studies in Germany, where she was an associate professor tasked with creating the first master's program there on AI, ethics, and society. So she is who we'll be speaking to today. And engaging her in a conversation is our very own Jaspreet Bindra, whom a lot of you already know. He's a tech whisperer of sorts. He's the guy you go to when you have a question. on AI, on digital transformation, on the future of work. He has written 2 books. He writes very regularly in the Mint a column on artificial intelligence. He runs a company that creates advocacy and learning on AI. So we are in the best hands tonight, folks. Please welcome Jaspreet Bindra and Dr. Maya Indra Ganesh.
Even before Maya starts, I want to refute something that Saloni just said. She talked about how she hangs around with the most intelligent and brilliant people ever. I was one of the people she hung around with for 2 years. So, it's not necessarily true. She was my professor at the same Center for Future of Intelligence. So just thought I will give a factual correction and hand you over to her.
Thank you so much. This is an extremely special and generous welcome. I'm delighted to be here, and thank you so much to Saloni for this introduction. Fun fact, Saloni has seen me has known me for so long when I didn't have fancy universities associated with my name. And as I was telling Jaspreet, Saloni's kind of known me when I was like a Dhila 24-year-old and, trying to find my way in the world. So it's very special, and it's really special to be in Delhi. This is the city of my birth. I'm raised in South India, but Delhi's got a very special place, is a very special place to me because I spent some of my life here and I studied here. And I'm so happy to be having this conversation with Jaspreet, who, he's my student, right? But the context of the Masters in AI Ethics and Society that I was tasked with co-developing and directing with my colleagues, Johnny Penn and Henry Shevlin at the University of Cambridge, was really a course for, people like you. Like everyday people who are in the world of work. It's a master's degree that was not for your typical, people who've just come from undergrads. It's for people who work in many different sectors and industries and who are grappling with big questions around artificial intelligence and what it means for us as people and as societies. So I would say that, there's Jaspreet was first cohort, version 0. There were
the guinea pig version.
Guinea pig, yes. I know you guys refer to yourselves as guinea pigs. And now we're in cohort 4. So we've had more than 150 people come through this program. And I would say that what's been really important is us as academics actually learning also from people who are working with technology, law, in different kinds of industries, because the theory of change that we have at my center is that there is no one set of experts who understand it and program it and know all about it. And it's really something that we have to understand as a shared societal activity, a shared societal enterprise. Sure, there's a lot of technical aspects. AI is literally data science, computer science. It is all those things. But it is also a social, cultural, and political and economic phenomenon. And we know this because this is the context of our interaction with it. And it's not sitting in a lab. It's not like genetic engineering that for 50 years, you have to be a biotechnologist. This is something that is a technology that we're interacting with every day. So, and speaking of interaction, actually, I'm going to stop here. In my everyday life, I have to do a lot of talking at people, and I really welcome and appreciate opportunities to talk with people. So this is going to be a pretty interactive session. And you know a little bit about me, and I'm going to actually ask Jaspreet to say, please introduce yourself. I know what it is you do, but I think it'll be interesting to hear about what you do in the context of AI, and answer this question for me. What's exciting and intriguing about AI for you today?
I will, as long as you also tell me what and excites.
I will. But you go, okay. And then
Lovely.
I'll take the baton.
No, thank you very much. Thanks, Maya. I'm a part of the furniture here, frankly. I live half my life in Quorum, and and a lot of people here whom I've interacted with. But I had a corporate career. A lot of people in Microsoft who are here. I was in the Tata Administrative Services. I was a group chief digital officer at the Mahindra Group, and then I kind of walked away from all of that. And now I do, in my opinion, far more interesting things. So in the world of AI, and in multiple parts of it. I kind of work with companies from an advisory. I speak about it. I teach that in Ashoka and at Singularity University in the Bay Area. I wrote a couple of books about it. I then went and learned about AI ethics and society for a couple of years at Cambridge, where Maya, as she said, was one of the professors there. And frankly, I live in the I live in the intersections of AI. So for what interests me is not like sure, we work with use cases, enterprise AI, etc., etc. But I think it's the intersections which are very, very interesting. When AI intersects with philosophy, or AI intersects with society, or AI intersects with geopolitics, the intersections of AI are far more interesting to me. And so I kind of even at Cambridge, my dissertation was about Advaita Vedanta, and how that and AI privacy in AI ethics seem to be related in some way from a Eastern context. So as far as you can get away from enterprise AI, and so all those things really, really interest me. But then there are also practical things. I mean, now pretty much every morning we wake up. I have a company called AI and Beyond, where we work in what we call building AI literacy in organizations and beyond. We believe that the definition of literacy will go beyond reading, writing, arithmetic to reading, writing, arithmetic, and innately, naturally working with all these AI tools. And I have a few favorite to answer your question. A couple of them, I'll restrict myself to two of them. There's this, I work a lot with a set of tools called deep research, which are almost proto-agents, which kind of help you create amazing research reports, help you do research stuff. I wish I had that when I was trying to write some papers for you. And the other one, which is really interesting, is a tool called Notebook LM, which some of you might know of. I write an article, as Saloni said, every fortnight for the Mint for the last 6 years. And the moment that article is written, it gets converted into a podcast in 3 minutes after that using Notebook LM. So I think those are the two things, tools and then the intersections.
That's fantastic. I'm so glad you mentioned Notebook LM. I'm really intrigued by it. I mean, that was one of the things I might have said about it, about what's exciting about AI. The thing I like, just a brief digression on Notebook LM, if you haven't seen it, you should check it out. Not only does it make your PDFs into podcasts, it's like basically it vocalizes long, boring reports. Many of us can absorb things better if we're listening to things. So it's like you have a long PDF. I myself am a hectic collector of PDFs, and sometimes it's easier to just listen to things when you have like long commutes. But the thing I actually really liked about Notebook LM is, if you're a writer like me, it can actually set up a model of everything you've ever worked on and done, and help you actually kind of like ask more questions. Things that I wrote 15 years ago, I may not remember, but if I have all of that digitized, I can actually sort of create a little model of my own work and start querying it and start looking at research that maybe like went into some essay or paper and that I never managed to actually complete, or earlier drafts. And I think it's like, that's very exciting to me as well. But I was, I have a response as well to the question, but also I would love for you guys to also think about some of these things around AI that you find exciting and curious, but also challenging, because after this, we're actually going to be talking to you, and we're going to invite you to also throw some of your questions. And I'd love to hear from what you think. I would say that the thing that really excites me about AI now is what artists are doing and what creative people are doing. And by that, I don't mean like, those of us who are not creative. And here I'm going to throw shade. You should know this about me. I definitely throw shade at things I don't like. And I'll try to be like, sort of like polite about it. But I do feel that there are technologies today that are enabling a lot of us who are not very creative people. Like, I cannot draw a straight line or a circle. I'm not very visually creative. But there are like image generation models that help non-creative people feel kind of creative. And I'm actually more interested by what creative people do as in people with specific skills and expertise and interest and passion do with AI. And so when I see a lot of visual artists or artists working with machine learning and robotics, I'm really excited about what's coming out of that. Not like, general deep fakes or like random things people do, creating avatars for their Dungeons and Dragons campaign or something like that, using Mid-Journey or Stable Diffusion. But I think I'm really interested in art and creativity and what that means for human creatives. So I'm going to leave it at that kind of general point for now. And
sorry. And I think, we were talking about this. Sorry, can I?
No, please go for it.
Yeah, we were chatting about this. And, everywhere you go to, I mean, I'm sure this is your 673rd, event on AI or lecture on AI because, for the last two years, that's all what has been done. And everyone says that we'll have an interactive event and then the people on stage keep on talking till 1 hour is through and then there's like 3 minutes left for questions. So we thought that let's kind of really do an interactive. It was Maya's idea. An interactive event and straight away open it out.
Yeah,
And
so actually I had developed this Mentimeter with a QR code that you could scan and, respond to some questions that we had, but there was a little bit of a fail with the tech. And so I'm just going to ask the question. So there are 2 questions and the first one is really what gives you anxiety, chills, fears, when it comes to AI, like which area, which aspect, and the other question is what makes you excited about AI and what gives you hope and curiosity and what intrigues you about AI. So there are 2 questions and feel free to respond to either one. And I think for a while, Jaspreet and I will just kind of take some questions and yeah. Fantastic. Perfect. Okay. And if you don't mind, I am going to also moderate a bit. And if I see other hands up, then I'm going to...
And just to add, just if, contrary to us, if you can keep your questions short.
Yeah. So
and please do tell us your name, where you come from.
Yeah, my name is Rajiv. I come from Delhi, West Delhi, as a matter of fact. So one motivation for coming here is because JB is a friend. There's a big
JB is what they call me.
Right. I don't think your mic is on, or you have to be speaking.
Okay. Yeah. So I want to write a fiction novel, a full fiction novel. I was just thinking if I could write it with AI. And I don't want it to be a routine kind of a thing. It should be my creativity plus less effort due to AI.
Are we taking a few questions?
It's kind of here.
Yeah, maybe let's take a few questions before we respond. Sure.
Okay,
and
so we just kind of take 2, 3, 4 and then combine them.
Yeah.
Hi, Ashok Basin, and concern very high, several, but deep fake is one of my deepest concerns because it can manifest itself in very ugly ways, including personal fraud, but more important, societal. Excited most about its impact on accelerating research on solving health and medicine issues. So those are my positives and negatives. That's starting. Thank you.
Thank you. There's someone at the back too. Yeah, right at the back. So maybe 1, 2, 3, and 4th at the back, and then we can have a conversation. Oh, okay.
No ladies with questions.
Yeah, so my name is Yogi, and I've been an ex-colleague of Jaspreet's. Pleasure being here, and it's always a pleasure listening to him and reading all that he does. I've recently concluded a book on AI that runs into about 2 volumes, some 750 pages, impacting 80 different activities in life.
Wow.
My understanding is that AI is both sentient and sapient, which means it has developed feelings and it has the intelligence to sort of deal with the world as we go ahead. To respond to ethics, a question is, what happens, ethics is more related to a nation or a country. The worldview on ethics is still limited to how countries are sort of dealing with it. What happens if a guy is sitting down in Timbuktu and he goes there and weaponizes AI? That's one, right? The other thing is with respect to deepfakes, as the gentleman said here just now, we know that deepfakes become a pandemic in South Korea. What Anil Kapoor may have gone ahead and won a case against one odd chap that went ahead and did a deep fake against him. What happens to me if there are some 1,000 people that do deep fakes on me or against the prime minister? Which jurisdiction is going to kick in and what's going to happen? So it's ball up in the air, really. Just an observation and a thought I thought I should share with you.
Sure. Maybe one more, the lady, and
Yeah, I'll
then,
just,
then we'll come to you after this series, if that's okay. The lady here. Oh, okay. That's
Yeah, so I think
Okay.
while she's
Hi.
ready with the mic.
My name is Anu Chadda, and so my question is: I often think that what changes would there be? Societal changes would emerge. Would happen? What should we be prepared for if AI takes over the normal human roles? So what should we be prepared for? What societal changes would emerge if this happens? Yeah.
lovely.
Yeah, I think my question is a little bit similar to hers. I'm Sunil Adlakha. I work in the field of AI. So I think I would just bring it one level lower rather than the societal change. I think in IT industry, the work we do, the millions and millions of guys that are working, a lot of it is repetitive. A huge percentage of it is repetitive and can be completely automated. I know that for a fact because I work on it. So it's related to societal changes, but more so, what are the opportunities and threats for the youth coming out of the college, thinking of IT as their dream job, and of course, whatever it has brought to us in so many years. What are your thoughts on that, and how to coach and how to motivate the youngsters? Because everybody cannot develop a model, everybody cannot be a developer. So, how to coach and motivate them?
You choose whichever you want, and the
Okay.
rest I'll take.
So just before getting into the questions, how many people here work in some aspect of software, computing, data science, machine learning with a tech background? Okay. And how many people work in kind of like the business of tech? Also, okay, good to know. Just need to know your audience a little bit.
So books, deepfakes, jobs, societal changes, 4 things.
But also creativity. The gentleman here wants to write a novel with AI. Could it happen? Okay, I'm going to start maybe here, and I guess what we'll do is we'll just kind of respond to the questions and kind of try to have a little bit of a conversation about it. And also, I mean, just to say that Jaspreet and I are sitting here and we spend a lot of our time thinking about all of these different issues. But one of the important things to know about, well, me as an academic, I think Jaspreet, you should speak for yourself, but generally one tends to specialize in some things and one has like a very deep interest in some things. I'm not a podcaster or a journalist. I'm an academic and I'm a researcher. So there are some things that I can speak about with a lot of intensity and depth and detail. And there are other things that I will say that, yes, I know the general rules of thumb. So it's like my dad, who's a transplant surgeon, if I tell him my eye hurts, then he'll be like, he has like some general ways of figuring out that nothing catastrophic is going to happen, but beyond a point, he won't be able to respond. So that's the sort of caveat to my responses, at least. There are some things that I can go quite deep and hard, and other things I will just be like, okay, this might be an orienting framework for you to then sort of unpack some of these questions. I can throw some facts and figures at you, let's say about like a report I was reading today from LinkedIn about the future of work and jobs, but I'm not a labor sociologist, or I'm not looking at like, changes in workplace. So that's a little bit of a caveat. I definitely do a lot of like citations. I will say, why don't you read this? And so on and so forth. I don't know if you have any, that was just me caveating how I respond to things.
I'll answer, don't worry.
But going back to the point about the books and writing, actually, I'm curious to know, what do you like to read and why do you want to write fiction?
Well, I've been a great volume of world literature. I've been reading Shakespeare and all the English classics since my childhood. And I've also read a lot of American literature like Steinbeck,
Right.
Evelyn Waugh, and other kind of things. So literature to me is not simply a reflection of the day-to-day life. It's also a mirror to the culture and the ethos of a place, journey, and of people who comprise the the milieu, so to say.
Right. Right.
So I tried writing a story using Gen AI, and the problem was it writes the entire thing, right? So there's no originality. I couldn't feel any originality in what they were writing. So I changed. I made a few changes, like you make the setting maybe in Venice, or you introduce a character, you make it a happy ending. But so with even these small prompts, I was able to create a workable story. But the problem is, that the feeling that creativity is not coming. Yeah.
Right. So this is really interesting. Have you ever studied literature? Just hold on to the mic maybe because we can make this a bit of a dialogue
Yeah.
because I do have some questions. Have you studied literature, sort of like in college, for instance, or studied how novels and how people write novels and fiction?
Yes, yes. I've done courses in creative writing. I've done courses in literature.
Okay.
Those never as a main subject.
Right.
But yes, I mean, as a hobby,
Right.
because the courses were being offered, so I
Right.
took them up.
Okay. So I would say that I think it's amazing that people can feel really creative with these kinds of tools, and I think it's very extremely fulfilling. And at the end of the day, it's like you are really the person who's deciding, is this good or not? And if we hone that skill, because at the end of the day, the ChatGPT bot is a tool like any other tool, and it's fast become normalized. It's like, ChatGPT, aside from like Claude or any of the others, has a very kind of anodyne, bland kind of way of speaking and responding to things. So it may not be, the first thing I would say is it may not be the best thing for actually doing creative work. So knowing what tool you want to do, the same tool that allows an 18-year-old to write their first philosophy essay versus somebody who's writing a marketing report and then somebody wants to write fiction, like you can't have one tool that does it all. I mean, maybe a Swiss Army penknife, but even then the Swiss Army penknife is quite a limited sort of tool. It's not like a high precision machine. So if you do want to think about writing good fiction, then you might want to think about actually the first point, which is this the right tool for it? And why do we think that everything must come out of one tool just because OpenAI sort of marketed it like that? The second and more important tool I would be is your own creative critical reflection in terms of what do I enjoy reading? And if you yourself are seeing that, okay, this is not working, then I would say that's like the most important thing to hone. I would say that good writers are actually readers, because you have then, it's like, you go into a place and you're like, you're looking at art and you're like, I like this or I don't like this, or you're looking at anything, and that refinement of what really works. The world might say, oh, this is an amazing book, like Fountainhead. People love Fountainhead. I think it sucks, but knowing why it sucks, why you don't like it, I think that is that combination of finding the right tools and having your own sort of critical reflection. I don't see why you couldn't write something really good. And then there's the whole other issue of just, you wrote the book, but then there's the publishing industry, there's marketing, there's like, what else is in that space? What's creating the edge? All of the writers who are sitting there doing nothing else except writing their first novels. Okay, what's the difference between them and you, and how are they sort of positioning themselves?
Yeah.
Sorry, I deal a lot with publishing houses, and I talk to a lot of authors and a lot of people who are actually people who read books that are submitted. And one of the things that comes out when it comes to artificial intelligence and writing is there's nothing that beats your own personal lived experience. So let's say that your grandmother is passing away, and on her bedside, last few things she says to you, something very personal. Now that AI is not going to hit that note. So all publishing houses are looking for the lived, the personal experience. And that, no, the AI is only reading what has gone before it. It learns from what is already out there in the world, right? So it will learn from what somebody else has already put out. That's not personal experience. If you are an author, and if you want to publish a book, the publishing homes and houses and editors all tell me that they are looking for the personal lived experience, and that can only be yours. And then how you write it, it can help you write it. But the story has to be yours. That's my little...
Lovely. So let me move away from books. I write a lot, and I use AI to write, Rajiv, but I will never, ever, I don't think we will be, for all the reasons that we said, for a long time, have someone writing like you. Use it to write, work with it, rather than offloading everything. It's not, it's like your co-pilot. It's not an autopilot. It's not going to fly the plane. And it's not the pilot. You are the pilot. Okay, and so think of it like that. But let's move away from books for a bit. I'll try and quickly address a couple of things which were talked about. The question which is asked most often to me is that, what is AI going to do to jobs? Okay, the second one is, when is it going to kill us? Okay, but let's not tackle that one right now. I'll leave that one for Maya. Okay, but what is it going to do? Look, it's a nuanced thing, but 4 things very quickly. Number one, AI is going to take away certain jobs. Some of the things which you talked about. It happened from the agricultural revolution till now, okay, pretty much. About 15-20% basis Goldman Sachs. But it's also, the number 2 is there are certain jobs it's not going to take away. So if you're like a construction worker or a farmer, you're very safe. Okay, but then the third and fourth are important. The third is that every technology, again from agriculture till now, has created more jobs than it has destroyed. Always, always. The problem is we don't know how many and what. We didn't know there would be like online reputation managers or search engine marketeers, before the digital thing came along. But the most important thing for all of us to know, and I'm being very kind of practical here, is that about 60% of jobs are going to be impacted in some way. So if you're a software engineer, like you said, someone using GitHub Copilot or Cursor will be a better software engineer than the other guy. Similarly, as a marketer, similarly as a journalist, similarly as an HR person. And so it's not AI that takes your job. Don't blame AI. It's a human being using AI who takes your job. Okay, and that's really how it is going to be for a long time. Okay, I mean, things might change, things are happening fast, but you kind of will have to go up the curve like we did in pretty much every industry, and people who don't embrace it are going to lose their jobs. And if I may say so, that's like, natural selection in many ways. And it's going to impact, it's going to disrupt, but always, as I said, there are jobs which are going to get created before, I'll kind of address the job thing.
I want to say one thing on the jobs thing. I think also the language is really important. And I know you know this, AI doesn't impact jobs. It's certain skills and techniques and workflows that get automated and changed. So I think they're also focusing on those things. See, when we use the language of AI is impacting jobs, AI is, these kind of like blanket statements, it creates a lot of hype, but also anxiety and fear. And then who's doing the work of managing that anxiety and fear? That's like extra societal burden. And that's why I have like a real problem with some sort of big journalistic or sort of empty framings of these things. Like, be specific about a thing. So it's like, I was reading a great report today about, and this is mostly based in, looking at contexts in the West, in Europe and the US and the UK, about the green sector and green jobs. And this is a sector which, whether it's like fossil fuel industries or working with utilities or construction and things like that, there's women and Gen Z really want to get into these industries, but often don't have the skills. And there's a lot of opportunity to learn with AI and to use AI in these fields. So I think the creation of the jobs, as Jaspreet was saying, won't just happen like that. It's like, this is where human ingenuity and creativity comes in, right? To be like, oh, there's an opportunity here to really develop something, because it's still all just tools. And needing to like change skill sets in specific industries that may not go away, and that will be here.
So, it was actually a Swedish politician who said it very well. He says, we don't protect jobs, we protect workers. And there's a big difference. Work is different from jobs. When you say you protect workers, it means you're upskilling them making them AI literate, etc., so that the work remains. They're not protecting jobs. Jobs will change, but protect the worker. Just moving to the deep fake thing, because it kind of came along, and I'll give my perspective on it. Look, it's a real problem. Let's not kind of kid around with it. Okay, it's a messy problem. Okay, and frankly, deep fakes have been around for about 15 years. Something called generative adversarial networks kind of created the first set of deep fakes. Now, with generative AI, what has happened is that it was always very difficult to make them. You needed great technical expertise, you needed lots of resources, money. Now it's become easier, so they can proliferate. Okay. Having said that, I will say two things. I always tend to look upon these things from an optimistic viewpoint, while it's a huge problem. Okay, couple things. One is that, a lot of times people come and ask me that, can my 12-year-old child try ChatGPT? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Just keep her away from Instagram. What I'm trying to say is that there's far more quote-unquote problems, issues, almost evil with the social networks which have been there for the last 10, 15 years, and we've lived through them. They've created harm, no question about it. But we've kind of muddled through. And with this, while there are a lot of these issues, frankly, there's more guardrails being created. I'm not saying it's enough, but more being created than were created for social networks. Right? So kind of, that's number one. Number two is, remember our elections, Indian elections. Okay, there was this massive hue and cry around deepfakes and how they're going to disrupt democracy and whatever. What happened the day after the election? No one was talking about deepfakes because they did not disrupt the elections. Okay, those happened the way they were supposed to happen. The deep humans actually kind of, So, as Maya was saying, that a lot of this, the hype happens for the excitement. The hype also happens around the fear. And so a lot of this tends to get hyped. While don't underestimate the capability of human beings, okay, to actually work through these things, because this is not the first time that something like this has happened. And I want to keep this on an optimistic note here.
I would also say that I was reading a report by Darren Asimolu, who's an economist at MIT, and in fact was one of the people who won the Reichsbank, what is called the Economics Nobel Prize. One of the interesting things he writes in this report called the macroeconomics of AI is that there's negative value being created because of malicious uses, or kind of there's negative value because these things like deepfakes are proliferating and are out there, and they're not actually generating anything good. It's just kind of showing you can do this with this tool, but it's not creating anything that actually has any value. It's actually sucking value away from the economy, from society. So I would say that yes, there's kind of like individual harms, but we do need to see better regulation, and we do need to see like some kind of governmental, justice-oriented, but also just education and saying like, what is this for? This is not allowing us to actually progress with this technology. It's creating like far too much fear and anxiety, as you're saying, about it. So it's actually driving the value down of AI. It's another issue that we are not quite there with. What are all the things AI can do? So I think there's an opportunity for a lot of creativity with guardrails.
I'm far more worried about humans than AI at this point of time.
For sure.
But there were some questions. Should we take the next set of questions?
Yes, absolutely.
There was someone at the back who's been there. We'll come to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, the gentleman at the back has been super patient.
Yes, there is also the one about what should we be prepared for, but I think we can come to that as well.
The societal part, I think, will be some of it will some of the answers will all answer that, but we'll come to that.
Hi, I'm Avijit Ray, retiring from corporate life tomorrow. So just
congratulations.
Congratulations.
So what I'm going to state is nothing new. It's obvious. I'm just curious if you can update us on what's the latest global thinking on the topic. So you go in there and you key in a search on Google. Now, Google itself now comes with some pre-built AI and you get an output. You use ChatGPT again, it reaches out into a volume, into a repository of data and then comes out with it. Perplexity is probably a better tool. but they carry their biases. So would AI compound that bias? And then what is the current thinking about not ethical, that's a very, it's too ideal a word to use, but how do you put in a way the guardrails around how enterprises, individuals, or organizations use AI in a way that is purely based on factually verified data? Is there any thinking?
So couldn't AI also prevent deepfake?
I like short questions.
I just wanted to make a small comment. There was a very interesting thing made, and love the fact when Jaspreet said, I think every change brings in the possibility of positivity and negativity. So there's nothing new. But I was just wondering that a lot of times we forget the role that we play. When a deepfake comes to me, what is my choice? I can actually stop it there, or I can send it to all my networks, or I can say, is this true? Is this true? And I've asked this a lot of time, people. When you know it was a deepfake, what was the need to further circulate that? So I think we often forget the thing that we play a big role in promoting or sort of contributing to that. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Valuable. Maybe we'll just take one last question or comment there, and then we'll...
Yeah, so you were talking about the 700th talk we might be listening. I actually delivered a talk at the Swiss Embassy in 2019 about the work we were doing with AI ML at the for smart cities. So I always think like technology for a purpose is what it is. It's just a tool for like what purpose. And we did a lot of use cases early on. Traffic, transportation, waste management. I did hands-on ML algorithms writing that. And Mr. Jaspreet, I was just, on a lighter note, I was just very threatened about the fact that AI बाद में देखेंगे अभी मेरे कोरम में मुझे furniture blend करने में कौन challenge कर रहा है. So anyway, and very interesting anecdote, just outside nearby, there's a mall, South Point, where a policeman used to man the traffic there. Now, far from AI, but there's just a cutout of him with a hand raised, which points. So I'm like, okay, it's his job loss. So, just very diverse, but I'll happy to connect with you after the talk on use cases as well. Yeah, thank you.
That's a fake, not a deep fake. Yeah, Maya.
Or maybe he just went on lunch break and it was just
No, I know what she's referring to as like this. Anyway, please. I think the gentleman and whatever.
Yeah, the question about the bias. So I like to start conversations about bias by clarifying what I mean and what somebody else means about bias. Now, if you've ever made a dress or like buying fabrics or are interested in tailoring, a bias is actually just a way of cutting cloth to accentuate. You respond to the flow of the drape of the fabric and the styling on the body, okay, the way you want something to drape. So basically a bias exists in everything, right? And a bias kind of responds to the fabric and the kind of outfit so that it fits right. So, but yes, bias has come to mean negative bias. I mean, like everything is biased. I think there's been a whole cottage industry around like managing bias. I think one of the interesting challenges has been bias has become very narrowly understood in terms of like, is it discriminating against this kind of person or that kind of person? That's entirely valid. And I think a lot of those things have been addressed. I mean, it would be ridiculous business sense for a tool to not address bias issues. But the interesting thing is how it keeps, even at the highest level, this desire to correct for bias keeps resulting in other kinds of biases. So a good example, quite recent example, is the case of Google's Gemini image generation technology that, you could get images of like, Asian Nazis in SS uniforms or, a black King of England or, an Asian Pope or something like that. Now, these kinds of things have not existed, but because it is still a tool that is is optimizing for something. I don't like to use the words programmed or pre-programmed because I don't think these technologies are really programmed in that way. But there are humans making decisions about what to optimize for. So there was a desire to optimize for, let everything, anyone be represented. Now, that's an approach to bias which I think is really problematic. You can actually introduce guardrails. The problem is it is, at scale, when you're trying to make a general purpose and technology that works at scale for everyone, then these things are going to fall through the cracks. So I think a move towards much more kind of smaller, more bespoke, and by bespoke, I mean contextual. I don't mean like small at the level of this table, but thinking about particular industries, particular communities. You can have something that's just like a base or a foundation that you then kind of develop more niche things around. You'll have more unique and interesting kinds of biases then, not like this kind of broad. I mean, like, there's a lot of questions around bias. So the way the whole thing started doesn't make sense in many parts of the world where we don't have like racial bias the way they do in the US. We have other kinds of biases, which don't manifest in quite the same way. So I would say that the bias question is not going away, but how we frame it, how we kind of think about, well, what is this model? What are these models or technologies kind of optimizing for in the context, and what are the guardrails for it, to kind of who's watching, how do we report on them, and sometimes accountability is not only coming from like the law, the law is not going to help us in this, and I think having that sort of upstream attention also from makers of models and makers of technology to be like, okay, where's this being deployed? So I'm much more in favor of kind of like smaller, niche, bespoke, unique, and that's the interesting challenge, I think, for industries now. What's your take?
So my take is a little controversial, sir. We will never have a biasless model, period. Okay, we will never even have a biasless human. Show me one, I'll show you a biasless model. Okay, because, look, what are these models trained on? They're trained on human thought. And humans are inherently biased. That's the way we are. We don't have like this. In fact, when we have an unbiased human, we call them a robot. Okay, so it's not going to happen. And it's interesting when you compare Google to a generative AI model. I mean, they're built differently, and so Google can actually pull out facts, verified facts, like you said. But Google is biased by the advertisers there. Okay, and so there's bias built in there too by the business model itself. And I think it's not about creating a unbiased model. It's again about, our topic today is being human in the age of AI. It's about our human faculties to come to, what you were saying, to detect what is biased, what is not, whether you agree with it, whether you don't agree with it. And so I think that's what we have to work on rather than we have to work on humans, not on the AI, from a detecting bias, in a sense, standpoint. And that naturally brings me to what you said. And look, yes, I mean, virus, antivirus, and therefore, deepfake, anti-deepfake. And the battle, the arms race has started, and it'll go on, it'll never be won, okay, in that sense. And again, therefore, it's more about your education, regulation, okay, rather than technology. The combination of all of these, which will help alleviate, not solve, the problem. And that brings me to the last bit, and I've written a lot about it actually. That again, I talked about Instagram versus ChatGPT or whatever. See, the thing is, I sitting in Timbuktu, okay, can create the best deepfake of Donald Trump ever, where Donald Trump says, I actually love Zelensky. Okay, and I hate Putin, right? You can.
You're being live streamed, right?
That's fine. I have on good authority that Donald Trump doesn't listen to what I say. but the thing is, that will remain in Timbuktu unless someone distributes it. So everyone can create whatever they want. In my book, the problem is not the creation. Human beings will create good stuff, they will create bad stuff. That's how we are. It's the frictionless, costless distribution of those which the social networks have enabled, which is the problem. The fact that this particular deepfake goes to 100 million people in like one mouse click, that is the problem. And so I sometimes think, and I again have put myself on a limb there, that we are regulating the wrong thing. In a sense, we are focusing on regulating the wrong thing. We're not regulating the wrong thing. We're focusing on regulating the creation. What we should be focusing is on much better effective regulation of the distribution. Because if you cannot distribute it, it's just for the personal satisfaction of the person who has created it.
But, which is interesting because actually I think there have been, harms happen, scandals, controversies, errors occur, and then there are affordances within the technology design and interface in the companies that must take responsibility for these things. I think there's a huge gap in terms of companies not taking responsibility. And then there are sort of regulations within sectors and industries. And so you do see, for instance, there was a time when WhatsApp, you could actually just forward things, lots of things, but it was because of like egregious harms that happened, especially in countries like ours, where all kinds of things get forwarded, where now you cannot forward to more than a certain number of people, or it shows you that something is forwarded. So it's kind of like there's technology, there's a problem, and then, you kind of like are in this, as you're saying, kind of like in this race. So
Friction.
Exactly, introduce and create more friction. And I think I completely 100% agree about it is the Instagrams of the world. And it's like, as you were saying about the introducing that friction to kind of sharing it, it is, but it raises an interesting question then about what is the work to be done and who's doing it and are we investing in it? If the work is actually social and cultural and political and it's not technical, we're overly emphasizing, technical solutions to social problems. We're also creating technical, sort of artifacts to address things in society that may not even be a problem. I mean, Google DeepMind produces many deep things, but the one amazing thing that they say, which really gets under my skin, is their tagline is solving intelligence. And I'm like, intelligence is not a problem to solve. Why would you say that? Human intelligence is not a problem to solve. On the one hand, it's this amazing thing that we think we have that becomes the model for AI, but then you also want to solve it as if it's a problem. So I think sort of this calibrating, like, what's a problem? Are you actually making a technology to solve a social problem? Do you have any social expertise? Do you understand what the problem is? Or you just like, kind of like, I think this is a problem based on, living in the Bay Area or something like this, like, why do we have Uber? It's because California doesn't have public transport.
How much time do we have, Saloni?
It's a good moment to time check. Half an hour.
There was a gentleman, 15, yeah. I'm hungry. The gentleman in red.
So what do you think is going to happen on the government regulatory front, right? Because you're seeing lots of pressure coming on WhatsApp, on all other social media ones. And if all of this is only going to proliferate more through these channels, and we saw what happened in the US, Elon Musk just went and bought X, got Donald Trump back, now they're best buddies.
Other questions? Yeah, please. Now you're treading on very interesting territory here, but anyway.
Okay, I have an observation, and perhaps you can address this best because you deal with the subject, is this, that as a matter of fact, between policy and practice, practice precedes policy. The role of policy is merely to codify practice, correct? So in that sense, today, it's a curveball that's being thrown at us, and we're still trying to get to grips with, hey, what's coming next, right? It's so unimaginable in terms of what's going to happen next. So where do you see the policy landscape, or how do you see it evolving? To my mind, I don't have a dystopian view of it to sort of alert people here, but I do feel that it's going to be very difficult, practically impossible for policy to be able to manage this practice, because this practice is moonwalking six paces to one on Earth. So how is policy ever going to be able to?
So I think it's similar, right? What I think there were a couple of there was the lady there, and then the guy behind, and there's another lady, but yeah.
Hi, I'm still here actually. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Hello, can I? Yeah. Hi, I'm Ashani, and I'm really loving the session so far.
Thank you.
I like to call myself a young startup entrepreneur in AI and learning. And I have a very interesting question. So I want to ask, to what extent do you think artificial intelligence is intelligent, or is it just an imitation? Because I actually feel
you
like
need to solve intelligence.
Based on what I've seen in AI, it seems to be replicating parts of intelligence, of human intelligence. So to what extent is AI just an imitation, or do we just call it artificial imitation instead of intelligence?
This one I'm going to answer.
Go for it. I think we both have answers to it, but yes, please. And then I think there's this gentleman here.
Yeah, hi. Hi, I'm Dhruv. I work in AI in Silicon Valley. I'm just here to visit my parents. From where, what I'm the motive, from the, how do I say this? There's exponential growth happening in AI. The amount of startups over there are popping up every like 100 a day. Um, it sounds like this is the momentum right now is taking it to further and further heights where uh, it's able to solve so many more problems that we didn't know it would solve. Where do you think it stops? Where do you think there's going to be a little bit of a pause before it continues its growth? Because in some ways we can't naturally pause it, but where do you think there's going to be? What are some risks to the exponential growth that it's going through right now?
You mean a bubble bursting?
Sure, that's a good way to put it.
Okay. And was there one more? I think there's a lady here. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Rekha Krishnan. I work in the clean energy space, and just building on what you said, Maya, that AI can help in skill building or preparedness for green jobs. So I'd like to understand a little bit around that.
And the last one, and then we'll probably be doing it up.
Hi. So you said AI is a co-pilot, look at it that way. But let's take chess, for example. So the best player in the world is not Magnus Carlsen, it's Stockfish. So I think at some point humans have to come to this reality that, hey, listen, we are second best here. So what do you think about that?
That one also I'll answer. But please, why don't we go first, Maya? Whatever.
The policy, let's talk about the policy stuff. When you're saying policy, government, which context are you talking about?
So if you think about the pressure on WhatsApp to change their privacy policy for Indians, right?
Right. So you, okay. So you're focusing. Your question was about India.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Because you also talked about like the US and things like that.
What could happen?
Yeah. I mean, I really don't know how to respond to that. I would say that what I will say is that I think the social media apps, messaging apps, like this ecosystem has a different sort of trajectory and history of policy and governance and regulation, which mostly comes from the US because one big challenge or issue around them is that they're all US companies and US laws, US notions of speech. These are apps for messaging and sharing information. So we've always been beholden to those things. But at the same time, as in the case of WhatsApp, I mean, like India is a huge market. There's incredible things that we are doing with these technologies and how we're reshaping it that the creators or regulators could never imagine these things happening. So I think that so you've always seen this sort of like back and forth and negotiation. I don't see why it would be any different. Now, of course, if you have certain kinds of political entities that are going to put pressure where they are, I mean, let's face it, with the economic, political situation in the US, those interests are going to prevail. Now, how India or any other country kind of responds to that. Well, for us, it's always like we can play the numbers game because look at what a big market it is. That's always the leverage that we have. I mean, I don't know what you want to say about that. I think basically some places have the opportunity to customize and put pressure back, and others will not.
So can I come to the policy regulation bit? But I was very excited by the couple of things which were said here.
Okay, wait. Before we go to that, let's just, the other policy question, the policy practice one. I think it's more like a loop and it depends on where you are. Like the specificity of where you are and what sector you're talking about. I mean, there's always a dynamic between policy and practice. And in some sectors, like for instance, like regulation of speech online or anything else, I mean, like use of AI by, in the criminal justice system or whatever, if you kind of specify what you mean, and some sectors and some industries are very quick. Some resist regulation like crazy. So like software typically is like, why do we have this whole AI ethics thing? It's a lot of like industries saying, don't regulate us, we'll regulate ourselves. So policy and practice, there's always a dynamic. but then it is specific in and responds to, the pushes and pulls and histories of those industries. So like in medicine and in healthcare, there's a lot of regulation everywhere around the world because we're dealing with people's lives. And then that introduces a new kind of tension because policy in those sectors maybe are not used to the speed and pace, the scale and scope and speed of these technologies. So there's always that kind of dance. And I think I'm going to leave that there and hand to
Well, so
Jaspreet.
just to talking about that only before, look, the different models. Okay, so I think much as I was kind of stuck my neck out on terms of no biasless model at all, here also policy regulation will always chase technology, okay, in that sense. And that's always happened, and it will, in my view, continue to happen. There are different models. There'll be country-level models. There are models which are trying to be done, which is, modeled on the nuclear IATA kind of arrangement, which has so far prevented another nuclear war. So a global model, but the world is much more fractured today, so we don't know. There are models, end-use models, the FDA kind of model, which, so the medicine, you don't regulate the making of the medicine. You regulate, when it's being used. So the user-based models. There are multiple models. I think we'll keep different countries or groupings will try different things. Some will move one way, like the EU AI Act, super strict. Some will be kind of the other way. I particularly, when I write about and see these things, I like, for example, what Japan is doing. I will not get, it's kind of the best halfway kind of thing which is there. And I think India is looking at that Japan model also. It's kind of a halfway. So, it's an open question at this point of time. Let me just take the chess one, if that's okay with you. And, first of all, chess was not, Kasparov was not defeated by an AI. Kasparov was defeated by brute computing. Chess is a deterministic game. You can have so many moves, and you don't need AI. It's brute computing. But you know what happened after Kasparov was defeated by chess, by a computer, Deep Blue, and then later on, as 100 out of 100 times, Kasparov or Magnus Carlsen will be defeated. Chess has only become far more popular since then. Okay, because we love to see humans competing with each other, despite the fact that, you see how popular chess is compared to 10 or 12 years back. So I don't think we should worry too much about that in that sense. Okay, so sure, there'll be AI or computers which will be good at a game, might defeat human beings, but you won't have humans and AIs. You'll still have humans and humans competing the way that is happening today. And then my final two bits, I know we have to complete up, and so I'll give the last bits to Maya. I really loved your question, ma'am. And, the only thing I remember of all those 2 years that I studied in Cambridge, Maya, is this amazing quote by Kate Crawford in her book, The Atlas of AI, which is, in my opinion, one of the must-read books of AI, where she says that, look, artificial intelligence is neither artificial nor intelligent. Okay, because a lot of behind AI, there are actually human beings working. Hugely, okay? And the intelligence part, as you rightly said, how do you define intelligence? A lot of times, AI has been said to be artificial intelligence. In fact, one of our very senior deep mind AI researcher told me that we made a big mistake calling it artificial intelligence. We're trying to live up to that, okay, since the time it was coined in 1955, 56. And so, is it artificial intelligence, or is AI augmented intelligence? Or is it like alternative intelligence? Or is it like ambient intelligence? I think the word AI, and I know Maya can speak far more eloquently about this, when in 1955, 56, the people, the so-called fathers of AI, were trying to raise money. And they called it, initially it was called many things, including applied statistics. Okay, but then applied statistics never gets any grants. Artificial intelligence, on the other hand. So I'll leave it at that.
And in fact, the other historical detail, really important thing about it is that they wanted to call it cybernetics, but it was already taken. So which is why they went for AI, artificial intelligence, and yet, it was very much about the funding. Also, they said in their research grant proposal to the Rockefeller Foundation, they said, we're going to figure it out in 10 weeks over the course of a summer program. I mean, the hubris of that. So I think what is interesting about that hubris is the weight of that word and how we have that legacy now where we have to say, hang on, you're understanding intelligence in this very specific, narrow way. There are all kinds of intelligences that we have that are difficult to codify and difficult to understand. We can think about collective intelligence. This idea of intelligence is very much about this one human where there's this brain sitting on top of, and we are this apex predator in the world and our intelligence is the best. And yet there are all kinds of creatures, there are children, other kinds of intelligences around us that we, just because they're harder to codify and name and then formalize into computation, doesn't mean they're not as powerful or not as valuable. And I think that pushing back against those words is valuable. And one way to do that is to say, so when you say AI, what do you actually mean? And it's boring to say applied statistics or machine learning or transformer model or diffusion, but it's helpful from the perspective that you're able to say, oh, you're not talking about this blanket thing of intelligence. You're talking about a very specific application. The minute you put people down to like talking about, oh, you want to create an image, you want to write a novel, you want to figure out traffic flow, you want to think about like best, waste management solutions, then you start talking about the specifics and then you can really, you don't think about like waste management solutions as like intelligence, which is up there. There's a lot of hype because, well, as the friend from Silicon Valley says, it's like, yes, you have to keep kind of like driving this. And, and I'm very hesitant and skeptical about hype. I do think that there's boom and bust cycles. And it's like, who's managing the recoil and where's the resilience coming from to just kind of deal with these applications that may go nowhere, for every one that succeeds, there's like, 99 that fail. So, but that's part of the system we live in. So I think that having other words for what we're trying to do, I think that's such an important question you're asking, and saying, I want to have my own language around it and rejecting the wisdom, so-called, that's coming from one place and saying, I'm going to like diversify how I think about it. What are we missing?
Can I ask you a question?
Please, yeah.
And then you ask me, and then we'll all go eat.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is still the question about the green jobs.
You want to take that? Or
I think I will just say that I can direct you to like this great report that I just read today. AI is one part of it, but I think generally there's a huge sector there which needs to just be, there's a lot that can then happen in that sector. And I'm happy to share the report with you. I think it might go a little bit outside of the scope of where we are today. Yeah.
So, simple question. Maya, what in your view is this thing about being human in the age of AI, which is the topic for today's discussion? I have something which I think about it, but I'm going to defer to you first.
Oh gosh, at one level I think about this like almost every day. I would say that there's actually two things that come to mind. One is that, actually we're a kind of lonely species. We really struggle. We're kind of like part of nature, but we're not really part of nature. We don't really work with other species on the planet. I think we are a lonely species. And the thing is, we kind of like each other. We like talking to each other. We like competing with each other, even across our differences. The competition piece that you mentioned, I hold on to that, when there's an app or something that sounds like it could be human, we've already got that sense to be like, wait, am I talking to a human? Am I talking to a machine? There's this idea of the uncanny valley that it freaks us out a little bit, that we would be talking to something that's not human, and we're very attuned to each other despite our differences. So one part of kind of being human is actually being like, you know what? I kind of like us, and that's okay. I'm not saying that humans are superior or better because of it, or that we should defend something because it's human. There's amazing things that cats and dogs do that we should also respect and appreciate. But the other thing that is sort of related to this is, we're seeing the automation of so many things that we thought of were human. So maybe our understanding of human, first of all, is kind of problematic. But think about what is the hardest thing to automate. And I think the hardest thing to automate is care. And in any profession and in any job, in any social interaction, the thing that is the least automatable is the thing that we do for each other. But even in the context of, let's say, agriculture, for a long time they built robots to harvest things, but they couldn't harvest strawberries and raspberries because the human hand is really good at picking things with great care and not crushing it. But, robot hands, I'm sure, are like better now. They can move in many degrees, but they're not really good at doing things with care or touch and connection, and it doesn't always have to be tactile. So I think that finding that piece of what cannot be automated is most probably going to be done by a human, and it's most probably care work. And I think one of the most undervalued thing is think of all of the ways that even in your house, who cares for you, who does the work of care. And if we can just focus on that, then I think we're holding on to what it means to be human.
Thank you. I am very similar. Look, the more I believe that the better and better AI gets, and it is like every day, exponential curve, right? The more human we will need to become. We are actually doing it the reverse way, unfortunately. We are becoming more and more automated, okay? And that's not the way to, quote unquote, win against AI. We were born human as children, as babies, and then the education system and then the corporate system did its level best very effectively to kind of dehumanize us. We've lost basic human qualities. I mean, care, compassion that you spoke about, we have that a lot, but somewhere we kind of sometimes even feel nervous about showing it. Curiosity. A child has that. As adults, we have lost it. There are multiple human qualities. The power to ask questions, curiosity. When we were young, our parents, our teachers used to tell us it's not the answers that you give, it's the questions that you ask. We only search for answers. AI is supposed to give us the answers, but we have to ask the right questions. We've forgotten how to do that. By the way, that thing is now being called prompt engineering. The ability to ask right questions, right? And so I think as we kind of as AI becomes stronger and stronger, the way we will thrive as a species and all the questions that you asked today. I mean, you mentioned it very well that, look, we don't exercise our human faculties to figure out whether this is a deep fake or not. We just look at it and forward, okay? Then we deserve what we are getting. Because again, we are becoming automated. We are automatons in a sense. And so I think if there's one thing that I would ask you to think about is that how do we, as we go forward, as AI becomes stronger and stronger, become more and more human? So can we do this after? I think we'll be around so we can have these conversations. But thank you very much.
Jaspreet, this was fun. Thanks. And thanks to all of you for engaging. Thank you.
We experimented with a different format. I hope that it worked.